Still.
Wow, all flexible sa amin.
Wala pang walang pero may ano eh.
Boss is.
Okay, privilege speech muna and then okay. And then pagkatapos, yung nasan yung additional reference to business? Wala kang copy dito. Wala. Unfinished business lang ang nandito. Oo. Okay.
Grabe man.
Okay, nandiyan naman si ano. Si is Corbus. Nandiyan siya. Okay. Hindi pa, may sabay. Pagka ano na? Pangalawa ka? Pag alam na natin. Yeah, yeah.
Babang pa lang.
Ha? Talaga kayo nagdadala sa amin. Kaya dumami na kami ng dumami. Ano ba?
Ayaw na sa amin.
So, huwag nyo nang paalisin.
Session resume. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, with leave of the House, I move that we open the privilege hour. So move, Mr. Speaker.
There's a motion. Is there an objection? I hear none. The motion is approved.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the gentleman from the 2nd District of Surigao del Norte, the Honorable Robert H. Barbers, be recognized for his privileged speech. So move, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Surigao, the Honorable Ace Barbers, will have his privilege hour.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much, Majority Leader. Mr. Speaker, I rise on a question of personal and collective privilege on a very relevant issue which I believe that the House must consider. Mr. Speaker, we are under a time like no other. Life as we used to live it has been suspended indefinitely. No one knows for sure how long still are we going to wait before what we know as normal returns. There are two casualties in this contagion. One is permanent and the other is temporary. Lives lost cannot be recovered, and with it, sufferings in families, communities, societies, and humanity as a whole. Scars are what will remain, a grim reminder of a distant past that we will choose to erase in our memories. If this contagion is not the end of the world, Mr. Speaker, then the other casualty will have a chance at recovery, and this is our economy. But the question is how, Mr. Speaker? Well, for our country, dozens of economic stimulus have been proposed and implemented. Yes, it will take time before our economy recovers. The downside is, while we wait, and though it recovers, one stark reality is clear. We are in deep, deep debt. All our economic stimulus packages are all anchored on borrowings. We have no choice, or do we, Mr. Speaker? We have proposed in the recent years, and we have prospered in the recent years, and this is by and large credited to our service-oriented economy. Much of our dollar reserves were propped up by remittances from OFWs, along with the emergence of BPOs. Both these sources, however, are now under threat due to the impending global recession. And during these times, investors look at precious metals as a safe haven investment. Mr. Speaker, allow me to be blunt in proposing something that is sure to provide the much-needed solution to the mounting debt that we have accumulated due to the various economic stimulus packages we have released. This will surely put food on the table, so to speak. Foreign direct investments and capital, and maybe lots of it, guaranteed will surely come and flow into our economy. I am talking about mining, Mr. Speaker. To give you an idea, right now as I speak, gold is trading at near $2,000 per ounce. While the world sits on indefinite uncertainty, this precious metal is at 10-year high. Several publicly available studies reveal that our country has been known to be heavily endowed with mineral reserves or resources. We have an abundance of gold deposits and other precious metals sitting beneath our soils, waiting to be extracted. One such example is the Tampakan Mine, the largest underdeveloped copper-gold site in Southeast Asia and Western Pacific, where, according to mining experts all over the world, has an estimated of 16 to 18 million ounces of gold and more than 2 billion tons of copper. And if we do our math, Mr. Speaker, at $2,000 per ounce of gold, that is a whopping $32 billion. At present, copper is selling at $5,800 per ton, Let's imagine that, Mr. Speaker. Tampakan is just one, and we have dozens more. There are a lot of other gold mines laying idle and waiting for government action. Our country is one of the few in the world that have vast deposits of these precious minerals and metals, if only we can harness them. What I am saying, Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues, is that it is time that we revisit our mining policy. Let us open the minds and welcome prosperity. We are a country that is highly dependent on imports. We have a relatively weak export manufacturing sector, as evidenced recently by our inability to secure some of the businesses relocating away from China. The only export that we have is our deep human resource, and that has kept us afloat all these years. While the other economies were suffering, our OFWs kept our heads above water. But now, we are expecting millions of them to come home, jobless. While we survive because of them, their homecoming today, ironically, will spell our collapse. There is no other Philippine product that we can export that can nurse us back to health except one. This is mining. This is obviously the only way, Mr. Speaker. And this is the time to invest in extracting, refining, and exporting these precious metals. Of course, there will be the usual protests and oppositions anchored on environmental issues. They will never go away, even if we assure them that technology kept evolving and better mining ways are now being practiced and adopted worldwide, safer and more environment-friendly. But once these people realize the prosperity that mining can bring to our land, maybe they will add to the voices and the calls to open up the industry. As an example, Mr. Speaker, Australia and Canada are two of several countries that have proposed or prospered from mining. A lot of our countrymen have decided to live in these two places because of their economic prosperity. Mining has a lot to do with that prosperity. Australia's mining industry employs more than 200,000 people according to the Australian Bureau Statistics, while Canada employs more than 600,000 people. Australia's mining has a 6.4% share in their GDP, while Canada has 5% share. While the Philippines employs 190,000 people in this sector, directly and indirectly, it only has a share of 0.6% of our GDP. This low number could be a result of the combination of low capital infused or employed, as well as the leakages, and therefore undocumented small-scale mining, which arguably is equally detrimental to the environment. Imagine if our mines are well-funded, transparent, and fully operational. They will surely easily pass the marks of these countries in terms of their contributions to their GDP. Include in the picture the benefits of a full capacity of this industry, Mr. Speaker, the taxes and fees that this industry pays the local and the national government. The excise taxes stand at 4% on both metallic and non-metallic resources. The income taxes, both corporate and individual. The benefits of the community within and around the mining sites, which are recipients of the company's social development projects as part of their corporate social responsibilities. The allied businesses that live alongside these projects and the people they employ. Opening these mines now will not only jumpstart the economy, but it will generate much needed revenues to the government for years to come. It is not a stopgap measure, nor a band-aid solution to possible economic doldrums that we will be experiencing post-COVID, but rather a long-term solution to our long-standing problems, which have become more complicated due to this unexpected visitor that is the COVID-19. Let us not look too far. Let us build around our country's competitive edge. Besides, these are God-given endowments, which I believe given to mankind to promote prosperity. In the coming days, Mr. Speaker, this representation will file a bill that seeks to review and revitalize the mining industry. It hopes to study the potential tax revenues it can contribute while introducing a regulatory framework that will attract and protect much-needed foreign capital. Let us all join hands in supporting this proposal. I believe that this is the only way out and is a sure win for the country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we refer the speech of Honorable Ace Barbers to the Committee of Rules for its appropriate action. So move, Mr. Speaker.
Is there an objection? I hear none that the motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move to recognize the Honorable Arlene Brosas of Gabriela Party List for her privileged speech.
The Honorable Arlene Brosas of the Gabriela Party List hereby recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, mga kapwa ko mambabatas dito sa Kongreso at sa mga mamamayan nating nanunood ng kasalukuyang sesyon, magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Noong nakaraang July 30, ang taunang World Day Against Trafficking in Persons. This day was established by a United Nations General Assembly resolution, stating the need to raise awareness and to address the situation of victims of human trafficking and for the promotion and protection of their rights. Human trafficking, whether for sexual or labor exploitation, ay isa ng sagka sa karapatang pantao at dignidad noong so-called normal times. Normal times meaning before coronavirus. Pero ngayon, kasabay ng pandemya, ay kasabay din ng paglala ng human trafficking. COVID-19 is not only claiming hundreds of thousands of lives, but is also causing a global economic crisis. And undeniably, the situation has a direct impact to women and children. It is very much alarming that during this pandemic, the cases of abuses, violence, and the exploitation of women and children have tremendously spiked. Lockdowns, travel restrictions, falling of markets, and closing of businesses, and other measures to curb the spread of the new coronavirus are putting victims of human trafficking at risk of further exploitation. Dahil sa kahirapan, kawalan ng trabaho, kabuhayan at tirahan, kagutuman at kalusugang pangangailangan, it has become very tempting for many Filipinos to resort to the crimes of online sexual abuse and exploitation of children, and cyber sex trafficking just to earn a few hundred pesos. Itong hindi inaasahang krisis, itong pandemya, ang nagpalala lalo ng lugmok ng ang kalagayan ng ating mga mamamayan, lalo ng kabataan at kababaihan. More so, our country has been holding the record for having the world's longest coronavirus lockdown. And according to the new study released by the Washington-based NGO, International Justice Mission, this stern lockdown equates to the Philippines emerging as the epicenter of the live stream sex abuse trade and the global hotspot for OSAEC, online sexual abuse and exploitation of children. According to the Child Trafficking Situationer of the Interagency Council Against Trafficking, or IACAT, 65% of persons trafficked were women and 21% were children. Increasingly alarming, in 2018, more than 600,000 sexualized photos and videos of children that spread globally originated in the Philippines. Considering the Philippines as the top source of child pornography worldwide, with around 80% of Filipino kids at risk of online sexual abuse or bullying. UNICEF report of 2017. UNICEF also noted that 1 in every 5 Filipino children is vulnerable to online sexual exploitation, while the DOJ, Department of Justice, released a report last May indicating a 264% increase in cases of online sexual abuse and exploitation of children. The study, which analyzed 90 cases of OSAEC between 2011 and 2017, involved 381 victims, with the average age of only 11 years old, below the already low minimum age of legal sexual intercourse at 12 years old locally, with the youngest less than 1 year old. In cases where the exact length of abuse was documented, the average was 2 years, with the highest at 4 years. Ang datos mismo ng PNP Women and Children Protection Center na 4,200 cases of VAUC, o violence against women and children, ang nagpatunay na kahit pa noong March, ang pagkukulong ng milyon-milyong Pilipino sa kanilang mga tahanan ang nagpapalala ng abuso at kontrol para sa exploitation. Philippine cases of OSAEC also have increased sharply in recent years, with parents conniving to have their own children victimized for the money. So COVID-19 really made children's living conditions hell, because they are forced to stay with their parents or close family members that are actually their traffickers. With the GCQ, ECQ, and the currently imposed MECQ order, children are being locked down with those who abuse and exploit them. At hindi mga simpleng numero o datos lamang. Noong April 6, inaresto ang pinsan ng isang menor sa Lapu-Lapu City, Cebu dahil sa kanyang pag-livestream ng sexual na abuso ng isang foreigner sa kanyang pinsang 4 na taong gulang lamang. Noong May 4, 7 menor de edad, 6 na lalaki at isang babae, edad 3 hanggang 14, ang nirescue sa Visayas mula sa kanilang ama dahil sa sexual na pang-aabuso. 4 sa kanila ay sariling anak ng naturang suspect, habang 3 ay inampon. Noong May 15, mismong ina rin ng 3 batang edad 14, 11 at 6 na taon ang inaresto dahil sa pamimilit niyang gumawa ang mga bata ng mga aktong sexual habang nakarecord sa webcam. Noong May 21, inaresto ang isang dalaga bilang nangunguna sa online sex trafficking sa Butuan City. Ang nasabing dalaga ay malapit na kamag-anak at kapitbahay mismo ng 7 biktima at ng 6 pang mga batang inabuso. Noong May 27, si David Timothy Dickin, isang Amerikanong residente dito sa Pilipinas, ang pinatawa ng habang buhay na pagkukulong dahil sa mga kaso ng sexual exploitation ng mga batang Pilipino sa pamamagitan ng paggamit ng webcams upang ibenta ang mga litrato, mga video o live stream ng mga bata sa mga buyers abroad. At bago matapos ang buwan ng Mayo, isang ina na naman ng mga inaabuso ang iniresto sa Caloocan dahil sa pagbebenta niya ng live stream feeds ng sexual na abuso na ginagawa sa 3 niyang anak. Lahat ay nasa edad 8 hanggang 17 years old o pawang mga menor de edad. Even according to the UN, This webcam scheme, in the cases, this representation, as previously mentioned, involved pedophiles in the US, Canada, Europe, and Australia, who pay facilitators to sexually abuse children, even babies, in the privacy of Philippine homes. They watch and help direct the abuses through online live streaming devices. Nito namang nakaraang buwan ng Hulyo lamang, nakatanggap kami mismo sa Gabriela Women's Party ng kaso ng isang 13 taong gulang na bata na ginahasa kapalit ng smartphone para sa kanyang online classes. At ang pinakamalala sa ngayong panahon ng COVID-19 ay noong simula ng community quarantine, according to the article released by Rappler, a number of anonymous women have exposed how law enforcers who man quarantine checkpoints took advantage of their vulnerability and raped them in exchange for food and even lockdown pass or the sex for pass scheme perpetrated by the police. Armed with a gun and now with more stringent rules at their disposal, some policemen have coerced their way to get what they want from Filipino women who are forced to sell their bodies to survive. What's distressing is the Duterte administration is complacent amid the rising cases of abuse. Malacanang seemed skeptical about the sex for pass issue, and asked women to report to the police instead of conducting an independent investigation. Ganito kabigat ang dinadanas ng kababaihan at kabataan sa panahon ng pandemya. Hindi lang virus ang kalaban, kundi iba't ibang forma pa ng pang-aabuso dahil sa edad at kasarian. Napakahirap para sa mga biktima na magsalita dahil hindi biro ang trauma na idinudulot ng sexual na pang-aabuso. Dagdag pa ang climate of fear sa mga tahanan. Ngunit higit na matindi at malalim ang sugat kung ang gumawa nito ay nasa otoridad. Dahil sino pa ang pagkakatiwalaan ng mga biktima kung ang mismong mga salarin ay mula sa hanay ng kapulisan na dapat na nagpoprotekta sa kanila. Lubhang nakakabahala dahil tila ba isa ng trend ngayong panahon ng pandemya na napakalakas ng loob ng kapulisan na gumawa ng mga ganitong krimen at takasan ng kanilang pananagutan. With COVID-19 community quarantines restricting conditions such as curfew, limited quarantine passes, diverting law enforcement resources, and even lessening the trust of the people towards law enforcement who abuse their authority, and reducing social and public services, human trafficking victims have even less chance of escape and finding help. Very few criminals are convicted, and most victims are never identified or assisted. Some countries have diverted resources meant for fighting crime to the battle to defeat COVID-19. At the same time, services to assist trafficking victims are being reduced or even shut down. In fact, there are reports that women's desk officers at the local level were mobilized for health and social amelioration programs instead of engaging in a proactive approach to reach out to victims locked up in their homes. Human trafficking is the result of the failure of our societies and economies to protect the most vulnerable. Evidently, the government failed to lay down a comprehensive and responsive program to cushion the negative effects of the health crisis to women and children. We have sounded the alarm regarding OSAEC and VAUC since March over the alarming incidents happening every 10 minutes. Up to this very minute, OSEC, OSAEC, and VAUC cases continue to rise. We strongly condemn these vile acts and demand the abusers be punished and the victims be given justice. Gabriela Women's Party calls for an immediate, independent, and transparent investigation on the cases of rape, online sexual abuse and exploitation, like child pornography and cybersex trafficking, We urge the Duterte administration to strictly abide by the rule of law and protect the most vulnerable members of our society, especially women and children, to implement and intensify gender-based programs instead of continuing the militarist lockdown. We need to protect our women and children and save their future from the silent crime. Kaya po sa kabataan, kababaihan, inang bayan, labanan natin ang abuso. Maraming salamat, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Rosas. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move to refer the speech of the Honorable Arlene Brosas to the Committee on Rules for its appropriate actions.
Is there an objection? I hear none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we terminate the privilege hour.
Is there an objection? I hear none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize the Honorable Minority Leader Benvenito Abante for his manifestation.
The Honorable Minority Leader is hereby recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just would like to put on record here because the Bayanihan 2, I think, was already approved in the Senate, and now it will be tackled here in the House. The parliamentary status of the bill, Mr. Speaker, is that it is now on the period of amendments. Our request, the request of a minority bloc, Mr. Speaker, is that if we could be able to go back to the period of interpellation, because of this very valid reason. While the Senate put up a funding of 140 million, which is actually pittance to what we need now, no? I think here in Congress, we're putting a budget of 160 million or 180 million, I think, no? Which is, again, very low because right now, all of us agree that we are worse than the first and second month of this pandemic. And according to our economist, the Assistant Minority Leader, Stella Kimbo, said that in this modified ECQ, Mr. Speaker, that we are bound to lose 12 million pesos a day. Now just imagine if the MECQ will be until August 18. So that would be 12 million billion pesos times 15, Mr. Speaker. And we are not even sure after 15 days if we will now go to the GCQ. So our request, if the leadership would allow, that we go back to the interpellation period. This is not to delay the passing of Bayanihan 2. But this is just to be able to really scrutinize exhaustively the need of our kababayans. Our concern, Mr. Speaker, is the funding. We're not concerned about anything else but the budget that ought to go into it, Mr. Speaker. Kasi kung halimbawa maging grabe po ito, baka magkakaroon na naman ng bagong level. Ang level po MAMQ. Ano po yun? Matira ang matibay quarantine, Mr. Speaker. Yun lamang po, I just would put on record na sana pumayag po ang ating leadership to go back to the period of interpellation. Maraming salamat po, Mr. Speaker.
The Majority Leader is hereby requested to respond.
Mr. Speaker, two things that we note from this speech of our esteemed Minority Leader, the Honorable Bishop Abante. Number one is we thank him for his desire to increase funding for a response to the needs of our kababayans. Second is that we are one with him that it is a very urgent matter. Our parliamentary status now, Mr. Speaker, is that we are already in the period of amendments. I suppose all of us here in Congress are one with our Minority Leader that we need to increase the funding for our kababayans in this time of need, and we need to do it quickly. Even now as we speak, Mr. Speaker, our leadership is meeting how to accomplish these goals, increasing the budget for our COVID response 2, our Bayanihan Bill 2, and how to do it as quickly as possible. And we will share the outcome of these discussions with our minority leader, and working with the minority, we hope that we can pass this bill at the soonest possible time with the maximum amount for our kababayans. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, if I may add,
Minority Leader.
thank you, Mr. Speaker. The reason why we ought to go back to the period of interpellation is the fact that during the period of amendment, Mr. Speaker, there's no more opportunity for some of the congressmen, especially in the minority, to ask additional questions that would really make a good basis on the budget and the funding we'd like to have, Mr. Speaker. Ayaw po natin, Mr. Speaker, na tulad po kanina, nagpuntahan na naman ang mga kababayan natin sa isang syudad na humihingi ng ayuda. At sila po ay napakaraming nagpunta dyan at wala ng pila, wala ng social distancing. Mr. Speaker, we do not want to go back to the same mistakes that happened in the Bayanihan 1, Mr. Speaker. So, again, my appeal, I hope that our leadership would be able to listen. And thank you, Deputy Majority Leader Rimpi, for the comment that you have made. Thank you po.
The manifestation of the Minority Leader and the Majority Leader is hereby noted. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move for a few minutes suspension. So move, Mr. Speaker.
Session suspended. Session resume. Majority Leader.
Alin yan? Additional.
Reference of business. Sa umpisa yan.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we now proceed with the reference of business and request that the Secretary General be directed to read the titles of bills and resolutions on first reading, as well as communications and committee reports. So move, Mr. Speaker.
Is there an objection? I hear none. The motion is approved. So my request is Secretary General to please read the title of the bill.
Additional reference of business, bills on first reading, House Bill numbers 7200 and 7202, protecting Filipinos from the harmful effects of trans fatty acids, by Representatives De Los Santos and Ong Ronnie.
Committee on Health.
House Bill number 7201, creating 2 additional MTCs for Santa Barbara and Pavia, Iloilo, in the 6th Judicial Region, by Representative Goriseta.
Committee on Justice.
House Bill number 7203, promoting instructional gardens in primary and secondary school curricula and promoting the use of urban agriculture in all metropolitan areas nationwide.
To the Committee on Basic Education and Culture.
House Bill number 7204, improving and maintaining forensic science facilities, by Representative Barba.
To the Committee on Public Order and Safety.
House Bill Number 7205, institutionalizing the transition of the government to e-governance in the digital age, by Representative Gatchalian.
To the Committee on Civil Service and Professional Regulations and the Committee on Information and Communications Technology.
House Bill Number 7206, conserve, protect, and sustainably manage peatlands and its resources, by Representative Revilla.
To the Committee on Natural Resources.
House Bill Number 7207, prohibiting discrimination against persons who are confirmed, suspect, and probable cases of COVID-19 virus, by Representative Olivares.
To the Defeat COVID-19 Ad Hoc Committee.
House Bill Number 7208, providing for a comprehensive development plan for the dairy industry, by Representative De Los Santos.
Committee on Agriculture and Food.
House Bill Number 7209, mandating the NDRRMC to promulgate guidelines for the rescue of livestock and working animals in cases of calamity, by Representative De Los Santos.
Committee on Disaster Resilience.
House Bill Number 7210, providing for a more accessible mental health service, by Representative De Los Santos.
Committee on Health.
Message from the Senate. Message dated July 30, 2020, informing the House that the Senate on July 28, 2020 passed with amendments House Bill numbers 6036 and 6144.
Committee on Appropriations. Committee on Health.
Communications. Letters and email data from several municipal mayors, city mayors, and provincial governor informing the House on their reports on fund utilization and status of program, project, activity implementation relative to Bayanihan grant to cities and municipalities and to provinces for certain months of 2020.
Committee on Appropriations.
Letters dated July 1, 3, and 17 of Salvador C. Medialdea, Executive Secretary, Office of the President, Malacanang, transmitting two original copies of Republic Acts numbered 11478, 11479, and 11480, which were signed by President Rodrigo Roa Duterte.
To the Archives.
Letter dated July 23, 2020 of Janice G. Aison Zales, Deputy Director, Office of General Counsel and Legal Services, BSP, transmitting to the House duly certified electronic copies of various BSP issuances.
To the Committee on Banks and Financial Intermediaries. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move for the change of referral of the following measures. House Bill number 738, 1432, 2020, 4179, 4356, 4366, 4391, 4962, and 6604. Promoting the manufacture, assembly, importation, sale, distribution, use, and development of hybrid and alternative fuel vehicles by granting tax exemption and providing incentives therefor. From the Committee on Ecology to the Committee on Energy, Ecology, and Transportation. House Bill number 444, from the Committee on Transportation to the Committee on Energy, Ecology, and Transportation. House Bill number 5642, from the Committee on Energy to the Committee on Energy and Trade and Industry. And lastly, House Bill number 5923 and 6472, from the Special Committee on Food Security to the Committee on Agriculture and Food and Special Committee on Food Security.
Is there any objection? I hear none, then the motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move for a few minutes of suspension.
Session suspended. Anong kitik? Bumabalik.
Saan niyo ba ano yung pinapost niya rin sa Facebook? Papadala ko. Padala mo na rin sa tao ko. Sila na ako. Sila anong sila. Haba na naman. Sa totoo lang. Kung presiding officer, ang presiding officer. Ang macho, ang minority, kakapin lang. Zoom na lang lang. Di okay. Parang kahit wala na hindi. Mas konti. Mas safe na. Pero pwede ba Zoom, oo. Ba't di nga gano'n na gawin para sa ano na safe na lahat? Actually, kung yung virtual, lahat Zoom. Pero mas maganda meron yung tao. Hindi. Majority, minority. Majority, minority. Ayos na. Kahit 5. 5. Sa kayo. Dalawa. Di ba? Ano sabi nila? Okay naman siya. Pero sa taas yan. Bakit? Mas naisip. Medyo, hindi. Ewan ko, baka nagparapit kasi. Parapit. Oo. Oo. Relax ka. Dapat. Pahinga lang. Huwag ka lang tatayo. Naalangan. Sunod-sunod naman. Huwag tayo nito. Lipat-lipat. Ano ka? Laki yung savings sa travel time. Oras. Committee. Pala. Mga pala na naman na ito. Dapat malaking LAB yung ano. Kaya siya. Gasolina, 40 lang naman. Walang sake. Walang ano. Konti lang, order lang konti lang. Open lang. Sige, dapat hindi. Ano siya? Nakatali talaga yung account. Mag-negosyo tayo ng ano. Ito pag napalagay ko dyan, mga bayanihan to, budget na lang itindihin. Gap na lang. Comprehensive gap na lang. Saka hindi pa, yung mga lalunay, patalang. Pero nakadalawang. Sabi ng budget yan. Pero 15 months, pero ang budget. Dapat pang COVID na, pang swak ka na rin sa ano, sa prevention. Walang tubig. Tubig, sabon. Kahit sa ano, kahit sa DepEd, yung mga inaano na yun. Kasi, walang yung pinagawa nila yung kahit mga portable lababo na lagay na kagad sa mga labasan. Hindi, pero isa tayo nasa dito. Kaya muna sila sa doon, wala naman kong ayun na maganda. Ako latag yan. May nakapundar na yun. Ako nalamin ko na lang. Pagdadagdag na lang sa baba ng latag. Yung paghugan. Para lang makapasok yun.
Okay? Session resume.
Mr. Speaker,
Majority
I move
Leader.
that we open the privilege hour.
Is there an objection? I hear none. The motion is approved.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize the Honorable Sara Ilago for her privilege hour. Speech.
The Honorable Sara Lago is hereby recognized.
Maraming salamat, Ginoong Speaker. Ang representasyon po na ito mula sa Kabataan Party List bilang mga pag-asa ng bayan ay lumahok sa nakaraan na State of the Environment and Youth Address o SEA na pinangunahan ng Youth Strike for Climate Philippines kasama ng iba't ibang organisasyon. At dito po, lalong nagkaroon ng mga pag-uusap hinggil sa kung ano pa yung dapat ipagpatuloy sa mga nasimulan ng mga kabataan kasama ng iba't ibang sektor hinggil sa pagtatanggol sa ating kalikasan at pagtugon sa hinaharap natin na public health emergency, gayon din ang usaping pangklima o ang climate emergency. Ang Climate Change Commission sa kanilang pagharap sa kapulungan na ito ay naghikayat, nanawagan sa kapulungan na ito ng pagtugon sa climate emergency bilang isa na ring hakbang, hindi lang para sa kasalukuyan, kundi para sa kinabukasan ng ating bansa. Sa bahagi ng mga kabataan, dahil ang nakataya dito ay ang bukas o ang future ng mga young people natin, ay siya ring nangunguna sa iba't ibang mga grupo at mga formasyon sa kani-kanilang eskwelahan at mga komunidad. At bago nga ang State of the Nation Address para sa taong ito ni Pangulong Duterte, sila po ay nagbuo ng tinatawag na hashtag Better Normal Youth Declaration. Ito po ay binuo ng hashtag Better Normal Youth Movement. The Better Normal Youth Movement is composed of young leaders from all over the Philippines committed to ensure livable and lovable cities for the hashtag Better Normal. They are part of Greenpeace Philippines, hashtag Better Normal Youth Agenda campaign, aiming to mobilize young people ages 18 to 30 years old to care about the future of Philippine cities and communities and support the local government units. The campaign seeks to redefine how we, as a society, reimagine our better cities. Ang representasyon po na ito, kasama po ni Senator Sonny Angara, ay nagsilbi bilang mga reactors at nagbigay ng aming mga action policy and recommendation sa harap ng mga nananawagan ng suporta sa hashtag Better Normal Youth Declaration. At ngayon po, bago po nila maiparating at maipahayag sa Malacanang noong kanilang declaration, nanawagan po sila ng suporta sa lahat ng ating mga policy makers, hindi lamang po dito sa loob ng House of Representatives, sa Senado at gayon din po sa lahat ng mga may kapangyarihan na umaksyon at pakinggan ang panawagan ng mga kabataan at ng mamamayan para sa pagpapanday ng better normal. Ito po ay naipadala na sa Malacanang at ngayon po, isang karangalan sa party list ng kabataan na ito ay maibahagi naman sa kapulungang ito. Sa ating mga kapwa mambabatas, naririto po ang tinagurian at pinanday ng mga kabataan na Filipino Youth Agenda for a #BetterNormal. And I start from the manifest of commitment and unity from the young champions of the #BetterNormal. We, the Better Normal Youth Champions, representing youth from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, are asserting our commitment to ensure a better future for our nation. We represent the future of the country. We have an important role in the present, and we are duty-bound to participate in actively shaping a just, green, and equitable world we envision. At present, we are in the middle of a global health pandemic that has magnified many broken systems in our society. Our generation is experiencing the tremendous pressure of living in a world of overconsumption and wastage, where healthy food and efficient energy sources are inaccessible, where fake news, hatred, and division abound, and where there is fear for health and safety. We are also the generation that will experience the worst consequences of the climate crisis. The impacts which we are seeing now: stronger typhoons, more intense rains, and droughts that are affecting our parents' livelihood opportunities and our access to basic needs, are merely a prelude to a warmer world where super typhoons and other extreme weather events are projected to be the norm rather than the exception. The climate crisis is affecting and will continue to affect rich and poor alike. But it is the most vulnerable: youth, women, indigenous peoples, marginalized groups and communities, and those living in poverty who will suffer the most. The crises that we are experiencing now are the result of inaction as well as policy making that does not put people in the environment front and center. We believe that the current pandemic has opened doors that can enable systemic changes so that the youth of today and future generations will have a better chance to thrive in a better world. We stand together today as the generation who will inherit the country to call on President Duterte and all our leaders, our fellow lawmakers, to take concrete actions to safeguard our future. We demand a green and just recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. We demand a better normal for the youth, for the most vulnerable sectors, for Filipinos. We call on the President, our leaders, to first and foremost uphold youth participation within a society that upholds democratic principles. We, the youth, represent more than half of the country's population. The decisions that government and businesses make today will impact the world we will inherit. It is crucial that our voices be heard. In this regard, we call on the government to uphold youth participation in every level of policy decision-making, provide platforms for youth participation, and guarantee a society that upholds democratic principles so that we may be free to raise our voice and propose solutions without threats of harassment and from the fear of being labeled as troublemakers. Second, Mr. Speaker, is to prioritize solutions to the health and climate crisis. Shift to renewable energy is a must. A 2018 UN report states that we only have a short window of time to prevent the worst impacts of the climate crisis. Without ambitious action on climate change, the youth stand to inherit an unlivable world. We are calling on the President and the administration to put climate action at the center of recovery programs to the COVID crisis. In particular, the government should ensure the country works towards 100% renewable energy generation and phase out coal-fired power plants that cause climate crisis and air pollution. In the face of the climate crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic, what we need are energy sources that are accessible, affordable, available to all Filipinos, and which do not harm human health. Second is the transition to sustainable and resilient food systems. A report released last June by the high-level panel of experts on food security and nutrition recognized that the COVID pandemic has exposed the weakness in our food systems, and its impacts will strongly affect the poorest and most vulnerable, both in terms of access to food as well as to proper nutrition. In the Philippines, we saw how many people had limited access to healthy and sustainable food in some areas, while farmers in other regions suffer from significant loss due to limited market access, leaving their produce to rot. With the threats of climate crisis growing each day, this is not the last food crisis that Filipinos will face. We demand that the government empower local smallholder food producers by investing and directing procuring from them and shortening value chains by advancing zero-kilometer food systems. We must also protect local and indigenous knowledge and allow communities to be active partners in building a better and sustainable food system that we all need. This needs to include the promotion of healthy, plant-based diets that are essential for a healthy lifestyle and which are not reliant on industrial farming systems that harm the planet. Third, Mr. Speaker, is to ensure green and livable cities that support sustainable mobility. We demand national policies that will support green, livable, inclusive, and safe cities and municipalities, and which will mandate local governments to ensure community-based city design that incorporates green spaces and eco-friendly infrastructure to support the physiological, mental, and societal well-being of the people. A key component of livable cities is sustainable and inclusive mobility that will displace the predominance of fossil fuel-based transport. The burning of fossil fuels by motor vehicles is one of the major contributors to the climate crisis. At the same time, it is also a major cause of air pollution in urban areas. Greenpeace research shows that air pollution from fossil fuels in the Philippines can cause as much as 27,000 premature deaths per year and can cost the country up to approximately 1.9% of our GDP in economic losses annually. Bad air quality can make people more vulnerable to diseases such as COVID-19, and children are among those who are most affected. We therefore also demand policies on sustainable mobility, green and efficient mass public transport, and the promotion of active and micromobility that is not reliant on fossil fuels, such as biking and walking, to ensure everyone's well-being while keeping our climate and environment protected. And lastly, on this aspect, Mr. Speaker, is the promotion of zero waste. Communities suffer as our planet slowly turns into a plastic planet, driven by throwaway culture and enabled by lack of real solutions. Recycling, upcycling, downcycling, and drastic approaches, such as waste incineration, do not address the root of the problem and will only encourage the continued manufacture of single-use plastic, which ends up as pollution and puts people's health and well-being at risk. We know that the only way to address the waste problems is to stop it from the source. We demand that the government pass a national law to ban the manufacture and use of single-use plastic products and packaging as an important step to realize waste minimization and reduction at source. And finally, Mr. Speaker, is the call of the youth in the Better Normal Declaration to put people at the center of local and national policy making. We firmly call on our government to put communities at the core of national and local decision making. Laws and policies must be community responsive and in order to reflect what Filipinos need. COVID-19 has shown us an opportunity to fix the problems and do it right. But the government must ensure that all recovery efforts must lead to a better normal that will help us build resilience against future pandemics and emergencies, as well as ensure a society that puts the well-being of the people and the environment first. We commit, collectively and individually, to do our part by being active citizens, not only for the benefit of our fellow Filipino youth, but for the people as a whole. However, we believe that action from all levels of our government, as well as the democratic processes that enable people participation in nation building, are key to realizing the better normal, not only to recover from the pandemic, but to address the much bigger climate crisis and its related emergencies. We call on our fellow Filipino youth to raise their voice and support this declaration. And we call on our colleagues, the Philippine government, as led by the President, to heed the voice of the youth and adopt the youth agenda to ensure a better normal for present and future generations of Filipinos. This is the end of the Better Normal Declaration, Mr. Speaker. And as the representative of the Party List Kabataan, we vow to ensure that this Better Normal Declaration will be followed through solidly, not only here at the halls of the House of Representatives, but as we work on empowering our fellow Filipino youth in our schools and communities, online and offline, we must collectively stand together and act for the pursuit of a better normal and a better future for all. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Maraming salamat po sa inyo lahat.
Thank you, Honorable Sara Elago.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we refer the speech of the Honorable Sara Elago to the Committee on Rules for its appropriate action.
Is there an objection? I hear none, then the motion is approved.
Mr. Speaker,
Majority Leader.
I move that we terminate the privilege hour.
Is there an objection? I hear none, then the motion is approved.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we suspend the session until tomorrow, August 5, 3 p.m. in the afternoon.
Session suspended.